Ever been jump scared? It's pretty scary. It's just great that the fan games are at times even scarier than the games made by Scott. I have 6 of the scariest FNAF games I could find, and the order of games will get progressively scarier until we play the scariest FNAF game. So without further ado, let's get straight into the video. Enjoy. Alright, starting off here we have Chuck E. Cheese Rebooted, and it is an absolutely terrifying but pretty old FNAF game. Let's get into it. This game immediately scares you, even when you're not even on the game. The scares start before you even launch the game. The application alone, seeing Chucky stare you down, is already just completely haunting. So let's move on to the actual game with the night 1. And this game looks phenomenal. Even all this time later, the game still holds up. On stage are all the animatronics, and they look pretty happy to be there. I'm joking, they look like they want to absolutely kill me. This game is pretty similar to FNAF 1, in that you need to wait for animatronics to move. When they move, they will be gone from their stage, and by this point, they will be roaming around the pizzeria. Yeah. So kind of like FNAF 1. On night 1, the only threat is Chuck E. Cheese himself, the main antagonist. And Chucky is by far the simplest animatronic in this game. How he works is he will make his way toward your office. And when you see Chucky get toward the door behind you and he will make some audio, pretty simple, you have to shut the door. And that is how you get rid of Chucky. Pretty simple. This night was extremely easy and I completed it in my first go. And at this point, we get toward the post-night section. Your objective here is to find different items. If you select all these items and you don't select the wrong one, and we'll get to that later, you will complete this section and move on to the next night with a bonus 2 hours already completed. So pretty much plush trap from FNAF 4. So night 2 begins and we have to face a new animatronic. This animatronic is Mascot. How Mascot works is he will go through your cameras and eventually he will make his way toward your office. Unlike Chuck E. Cheese, Mascot will just stay at your office and you cannot shut the door, basically ending your game. And I didn't actually know Mascot can literally hold the door in place. So when this happened first time in my game, my jaw dropped. This was by far the most terrifying experience I've ever had in a FNAF game, because you don't expect this to happen, yet it happens, and yeah, it is bad. To get rid of Mascot, he kind of acts like Freddy in FNAF 1. You have to keep your camera on him, and this will basically just get rid of him. With that, eventually I would complete night 2 and move on to night 3. And again, we had the post-night section, but this time I failed it. And I was met with a jump scare, so yeah, let's move on to night 3, where we see a new animatronic. This animatronic is Jasper T. Joels. How Jasper works is he will obviously go off his stage and will eventually make his way toward your office. Unlike the other animatronics, however, Jasper will be located in front of your desk. If you see Jasper doing this, you must use the stage call. Using this will reset Jasper to his original position and he will go through his cycle again. We also have another animatronic, and this is Mr. Munch. Mr. Munch will go off his stage, and by this point he will go through your cameras. If you see Mr. Munch pop on your camera, you have to select that camera and keep on that camera for around 3 to 5 seconds. The camera will go static and eventually Mr. Munch will go back to his stage. If you fail to do this, however, you will be met with a quick jump scare. You have around 10 seconds until Mr. Munch will jump scare you, making him a top priority for the later nights. My strat remained the same. I would check for Mascot on the camera. Once I find Mascot, I would pretty much have a waiting game until Mr. Munch moved from his stage. At that point, I would immediately go ahead and check where he was. And with Jasper, well, I will know when he's in my office because he will be in my view, so pretty simple. And with Chuck E. Cheese himself, well, I check the door once every so often. If I see him there or if I hear him, I will shut the door. And this strat will eventually get me through night 3, and we will eventually get to night 4. And I forgot to say, I failed the post-night section again. So far we are only 1 successful post-night shift, so that's great. For night 4 we have a new animatronic, and this is Helen. With Helen, she will eventually go off her stage, and by this point she will make her way toward your cameras. Helen will roam around the pizzeria until she makes a noise. When she makes her noise, and this can be several sounds, but when you hear her noise, you have to sound the stage call, and this will send her back toward the main stage. So it's kind of like Jasper, but a little bit more harder because we don't actually know when she will use her sound. We need to pay very close attention. I found Helen to be very annoying, and her jump scare as well is just terrifying. Seeing this chicken jump scare me and the just bland and dead face they make, it really just gives that eerie vibe that I absolutely love in a really good FNAF game. Like, top tier jump scares here, guys. Just top tier. I would complete night 4, and this will lead us on to night 5, where we now have every single animatronic out and about. And the last animatronic we have to take care of is Pasquale. And this little Italian man is just kind of like Foxy. In fact, it literally is Foxy. How Pasquale works is he will eventually make a movement in his stage area, and if you see this, you have to sound the stage call. Again, the stage call is a all-in-one fix. It literally takes care of 3 different animatronics. So you can tell what I did. I spammed it like a lot because even if I didn't know where Helen was, I would just use it because using the stage call doesn't really make the animatronics more aggressive. So in knowing that, I just used the absolute I used it, and I used it a lot. This night took me upwards of an hour to complete. The animatronics just kept on moving, and it felt like every single second a new animatronic would just appear out of nowhere. This night was just brutal. The worst part about this night was dealing with Chuck E. Cheese and Jasper at the exact same time, because the problem is if you get Jasper when Chucky spawns, you're pretty much screwed. The only way to deal with this is to use the stage call and then immediately look behind you to shut the door, but the timing is so tight, and even one mistake can just lead to an instant death, and this happens quite often. They like to spawn with each other a lot, so I had to be very careful to not screw up, and with a bunch of practice and a bunch of attempts, I would eventually get a really good run where I would beat the night and thankfully finish this absolutely horrifying game. This one was tough. And we say hello to the extras menu, where we get to see a bunch of cool stuff, including the characters, the jump scares, unused content, and this game was overall an absolute blast to play. It is one of the scariest FNAF fan games out there. If you're looking for a scary but challenging game, I would definitely recommend this absolutely gem of a game. Overall, Chuck E. Cheese Rebooted gets a scare rating of 2 out of 5. Let's get into our next game. This next game is The Joy of Creation Reborn. I know it's not the Joy of Creation story mode, however later on we will get to the new Joy of Creation game, so keep watching for that. I thought we'd go back to memory lane and play the original Joy of Creation, the free roam version, so let's get into it. We start this game and we have to first take on Freddy, and Freddy is located on the top floor of the building, and it is just amazing to come back to this game so many years later. Like, it's been a solid 6-7 years since I last touched this game. Our objective here is to grab 5 objects. We need to find every single object in a short time of 90 seconds, and to add on top of that, we have a 7-foot animatronic tracking us down. So pretty fun stuff. And knowing my luck, the first thing that happened to me is I ran straight into Freddy, and by this point I had to run away from him, and I was screaming in fear. This was absolutely terrifying. The glowing white eyes mixed with the metal thuds create a absolutely terrifying experience, and being jump scared in this game is like being taken to a new universe, and yeah, that's all I can say. Yeah, this game is terrifying, but I would look for these objects and I realized that they have set locations, so going from objective to objective was pretty easy, and as soon as you know it, I had all objects and everything was fine and dandy. But I would conclude this section with a chase with Freddy, and I was just scared, very scared, but that concludes Freddy. Pretty simple. Let's move on to Bonnie, and Bonnie is kind of the same thing, where we have to find 5 objects within 1 minute, and these objects are obviously scattered randomly. This time they're not in set locations, and we need to find these objects before Bonnie tracks us down. And this time we don't just get jump scared, but we get hit in the head by a metal hand. This level is significantly more harder than Freddy because first of all, Bonnie is faster, and I also know that Bonnie has red eyes, and red is is just a lot scarier than White Eyes. I would look through the basement, just looking through every single corner, trying to find all the objects. And this level took me a lot longer than Freddy. Eventually, I would beat this level and we would get absolutely clotheslined by Bonnie, and this will take us straight into the third chapter of this game, which is Chica, which is by far the hardest level in this whole game. So let's get into it. Chica basically plays like Slenderman. She spawns in randomly. If you stare at her for too long, she will basically instantly kill you. And the more objects you collect, the more aggressive Chica will become. Pretty simple. You are given 5 minutes to find all these objects, but still, this level was by far the hardest in the whole game. Firstly, because the objects are literally in random locations. The locations themselves are set, they don't change. They're not random. However, I still found them to be really extremely hard to find, mixed with Chica being by far the scariest of all animatronics. She can spawn in randomly, and when she does, if you stare at her for too long, like I said before, she will chase you down in the most horrifying fashion of all time. Her eyes turn bloodshot red, and she will run at you at near light speeds, so not a good way to go out. I would try find a route. Each game, I would use this route to find as many paper drawings as I could, and this would kind of help me a lot because I would basically be able to chalk off at least 6 objects per game. However, this still left me with around 4 objects, and this took me the longest time. To find the objects and to collect all of them before Chica jump scares me was definitely this game's most difficult task. A lot of times I would be in the forest looking for glowing items. This would basically be the drawings. However, most times these glowing items would be Chica's eyes. If I didn't look away fast enough, this would lead to a very quick death. But you know me, I would eventually beat this night. However, it took me over an hour to beat, so pretty embarrassing stuff here. But seriously, try this out. It is honestly harder than it looks. To find these objects and to not get killed by Chica, it's hard stuff. Anyways, enough of Chica. Let's move into the final animatronic in this game, which is Foxy. Foxy is located in the attic, and the way Foxy works is he will chase you down, and if his eyes are white, you can use the flashlight to basically stall him, and this will make him just blind himself. So pretty much Foxy, you should have gone to Specsavers. Foxy is tough in the way that he doesn't act like the other animatronics and may take a while to beat if you don't know his mechanics. Spawning into this level, I died multiple times because I didn't know what to do. Foxy would just kill me instantly and I would get pretty mad. You have to find 5 objects, and unlike the other levels, Foxy is in a very small and confined space, which actually makes things a lot easier because the objects are very easy to spot, and you can pretty much get this level done first go as long as you learn what Foxy's mechanics are. There was a bunch of times where Foxy would just run up behind me and I didn't know where he was, and this led to a few screams, but eventually I would get every single object and be done with this night. And this concludes the Joy of Creation Reborn. However, we actually have one more thing to do, and this is the gallery where we see all the animatronics, and these things just look absolutely terrifying. The gallery section actually has a little secret. You get teleported to a random section on the map, and here you just get stalked by this random entity. It's pretty much the animatronics, but their souls, I'm assuming. And I just kind of walked through here just really nervous because I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. So one dark hallway later, I would get jump scared by Foxy and my game would crash. So that would very much conclude the Joy of Creation Reborn. A overall very terrifying experience. This game gets a scare rating of 1 out of 5, but that doesn't mean I don't think it's scary. It just means that the other games are even scarier. So let's get into them. So this next game is called Graveyard Shift at Freddy's. This game takes place in the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. You, the night guard, have to face the animatronics, which have been deactivated. However, suddenly throughout the night you will see they aren't so deactivated. They move a lot. And this game is a very different take to any FNAF game I've ever played. First of all, the menu screen, it looks something out of a just completely broken, and it looks like you shouldn't be playing this game straight off the bat. It looks like it's some sort of malware, but you get into the game and all of a sudden you have to just kind of rely on your instinctive skills. You have a camera system that pretty much acts the same as FNAF 1, but the difference is the camera has a timer, so you can't be on the camera all game. You have to kind of go through the cameras, and you have to go from camera 1 to camera 7, and then you have to restart from the beginning. So you have to use the switch timer effectively. Furthermore, you have an alarm, and this essentially works as a kind of distraction for the animatronics. However, if you use the alarm too much, the animatronics will eventually get used to the alarm and won't react to it. So we have to use the alarm sparingly. Furthermore, we have a light source, and we also have a door which we need to shut when the animatronics get too close. But for now, I was kind of getting used to the game, seeing what worked and what didn't work, and eventually I would see the first movement in this game, which was Bonnie, and Bonnie began to move through the cameras. I was really taken back and unnerved by the way they portray the animatronics in this game. They are just so alien and so strange, the way they move and the poses they make on the cameras. Eventually, I would see Bonnie get toward my office. I saw Bonnie on cam 6 and he just randomly disappeared. So I checked my window light and well, Bonnie appeared, and this took me back a little bit because this was just terrifying how the animatronic kind of snoops in and you need to shut the door as soon as possible. This reset Bonnie. However, Bonnie would rapidly go back toward my office. And with this game, if you reset the animatronic, their AI increases in difficulty, so now Bonnie is going to be way larger of a threat. And as soon as you know it, Bonnie was back at cam 6, and I was just kind of taken back by how quick Bonnie actually moved to my office. By failing to check Bonnie, I would succumb to his jump scare, and this was just terrifying. When you don't know when the animatronic is going to jump scare you, mixed with a actually really decent jump scare, you just get completely taken off guard, and this caused me to scream a little bit, so that was fun. I would reattempt night 1, and after numerous attempts, and yes, night 1 did take me upwards of 20 minutes, I would eventually get a run where I would complete the night, and this was kind of the beginning of the end, because night 2 would be a lot harder than this night. For night 2, we have two new animatronics. We have Cupcake and we have Chica. Both are separate animatronics, not like how they used to be in FNAF 1 where they used to be the same. Anyways, in this night, Chica is kind of like Foxy in her mechanics. She will move through the pizzeria, but eventually she will dart toward the office. This is completely random and can happen on literally any hour, so you have to be very observant and make sure not to have this happen without you knowing. When Chica does this, you can hear a bunch of movement, just pots and pans getting tossed around. You can also see on the stage camera, Chica will literally move through the camera and run toward the office. Just terrifying stuff. And when Chica gets to the office, she will make her appearance known by literally having her head inside your office. You need to then react quickly by shutting the door, and this will get rid of Chica. She's very finicky and was definitely the hardest part of the night. And then we have Cupcake, who is pretty simple compared to Chica. On cam 7, Cupcake will eventually be seen at around this spot right here, and eventually Cupcake will move to the second phase where Cupcake will be seen kind of just moving around in the camera. By this point, you need to sound the alarm and this will get rid of Cupcake. Very simple. This will take me a while to actually realize Cupcake was an animatronic. I at first didn't know how to get rid of Cupcake until a bunch of attempts later where I figured Cupcake was its own animatronic and acts differently to the others, so that was fun. But anyways, this night was kind of brutal. It took me upwards of an hour to beat this night. I found learning Bonnie's movements to be quite difficult because Bonnie is a little bit different. If you see Bonnie in different camera positions to where he normally is, you need to sound the alarm. I actually didn't know this for a while, so I would get jump scared randomly by Bonnie and I would just be so confused how I died. But eventually I learned that Bonnie will make moves toward the office and you need to sound the alarm, so that was fun. With all the mechanics down pat, eventually I would complete night 2 and this would conclude Graveyard Shifts at Freddy's. This game is in its demo phase, but nonetheless it is a very polished FNAF game and I cannot wait until this game fully releases. This is going to be one to come back to. So this game gets a 3 out of 5 stars on the scare rating. So with that, let's move on to our next game. So this next game is Juniors, and this is one of the most polished FNAF games I've ever played. So without further ado, let's go straight into it. We start this game off and immediately we are met with a cutscene, and here we are transported into a alternate reality. It appears that us, the security guard, have been killed, and we have been sent to this random place in this random pocket of space, and we see some cool stuff like this floating brain. Just looks something out of the back rooms, just some very creepy stuff. Someone is living here, and the person's name is Fredbear. This is a lost spirit who has been basically sent to this place by some random spirit who haunts the Juniors attraction, and our job is to, well, capture this ghost or this spirit. So Fredbear sends us into the night shift, and I don't know how the laws of physics work in this dimension, but we essentially can go into and back from the real world, which is pretty awesome. Nonetheless, the animatronics here are very creepy. You are basically playing Among Us in that you have to find the animatronic who is responsible for being the ghost, or which animatronic is possessed. We have a camera feed which, well, allows us to monitor the animatronics and to see if they move or make any suspicious activities. Some suspicious things can be like flickering lights, handprints on the camera itself, or any movements that are like sudden or suspicious. And here is where we need to kind of find and track that animatronic. We can also have the animatronics repaired, because each night the animatronics have a set amount of repair status. If this reaches 0, then you get jump scared. So you have to keep all the animatronics as high as possible, as if they get too low, then they will kill you. So this night I was kind of getting used to the sounds and the kind of visual cues the animatronics make. My first run went pretty badly as I was killed by the marionette, because something the game doesn't tell you is the marionette actually has a music box, and if you hear this and you see suspicious activity, then the marionette was possessed. So this killed me, and the jump scares themselves are horrific. And I also have to say huge props to these designs. They are just the most creepy animatronic designs I've seen in ages. These things are terrifying. But eventually I would guess the correct animatronic twice, and this would allow me to complete night 1, and now we had to go into night 2. And here we find a little bit more about what happened to Fredbear, and he gives us info on who he is, how he got here, and what our main objective is. And again, we need to find the ghost that is possessing the pizzeria, and we also are hinted at the basement, which is where the ghost resides. The next night is the exact same thing, however now we have another entity to find, so it is a little bit harder, and this is where I used the repairs for the first time. And they're very quick sections where you are put in a back room and you have to grab the mechanical part, pop it into the bin, and pop the spare part and chuck it into the animatronic. Pretty simple. This would allow me to essentially get me further into the night and also be able to grab more info on the animatronics. I would also see some fingerprints, and this would kind of cue me in to who is responsible, and this would allow me to find the animatronic responsible for making all the paranormal activity. I also found that Balloon Boy is the only animatronic that isn't in the cameras. To find Balloon Boy, you have to go to the stability and you have to check for his percentage, and if it's glitching out, then it's Balloon Boy. I made my way to the final animatronic, but however, I had Chica and Foxy running out of percentage, which means I was very close to dying. So I would wait until the animatronic was in the pizzeria, and by this point it was just a guessing game. And I chose to guess Freddy as he had the highest percentage in my game, and what do you know, Freddy was possessed. So I barely made it out of night 2, so that was pretty interesting. This would conclude the night, and well, we would grab a VHS tape, and this was pretty alarming because I didn't know that these were even in the game, so getting one was kind of off-putting, but I chose to watch it out of my own reluctancy, and this would give me a bunch of lore details on what was going on. The video itself is a sketch of Freddy, well, a Play-Doh version of Freddy, and he seems to be holding a leg and bringing it to someone. The next night would give us some information on what was actually going on, and it seems that Freddy was actually collecting parts for this thing called the Mangle, who is pretty much the main antagonist of this game. So our task here was to go back to Juniors and to really find out what was happening with the Mangle. This night we would have to find 4 animatronics that were possessed, and it was a little bit harder, but but the night itself was pretty manageable. I would die a few times due to, well, me being pretty bad at the game, but eventually I would find out more cues are actually in the game without it telling you. Like for example, if the camera gets shut off, this could mean that there's an animatronic that is possessed in that camera feed, and finding out new ways to find if animatronics were possessed helped me a lot. On my third go, I would beat night 3, and this would give us a new VHS tape. And here we see Bonnie and Freddy just in this little room talking to each other about something. During the night, Bonnie grabs another part and brings it toward the basement, again fueling into that mystery. This night, I couldn't find Paul Bear, so I had a little search for Paul Bear to see where he was, so this had me go outside the boundaries of the Barrens, which is what this location is called. I ran around and suddenly I kind of lost track where I was going, and I was kind of lost down here. Suddenly some noise started to sound and I was very alarmed, and by looking behind me, I would see a spirit chase me down, and this was so scary because I was not expecting this to happen. So with that terrifying start to the night, I would actually begin the night by looking for animatronics. This night was a lot like night 3, but just with the addition of another animatronic to find. I would eventually complete the night, and this would lead us into night 5, but we have another VHS tape to watch. In this tape we have Chica, and Chica seems to awake in the middle of the night. She grabs a part and is seen walking toward the basement, and again it is alluded that the mangle is some sort of amalgamation of all the animatronics. The last night is labeled the last night of sanity, kind of alluding to what would happen in night 6, but this night we have 2 more animatronics to spot, and this would leave us with 7 animatronics to find in one night. So I would get straight onto the cameras and begin to search for the animatronics, and this night was very hard. The good thing is that when you begin the night, the spirit spawns in straight away, so it gives you more time to actually search for the spirit. But then again, it is a way harder night, and mixed with all the animatronics percentage going down faster, it makes night 5 pretty difficult. So I had a bunch of deaths, but this would make me better at finding the animatronics. So with my successful run, I had a bunch of close calls, but this last night was very close. All of my animatronics were low on percentage, so this was just a matter of guessing, and I had Chica on like 10%, and when the animatronic spawned, I just went, you know what, let's go Foxy, and somehow it was the right animatronic, and this would conclude night 5, and this was where we finished the main game with a final cutscene of the, well, all the animatronics being brought to this one place and this entity being showed fully. And now it was time to actually enter the basement with night 6. We say our goodbyes to Paul Bear and we enter the basement, where we are met with a very sick cutscene of the FNAF 2 trailer but redone. This was something that I was not expecting. They pulled the FNAF 2 Bonnie trailer, and this was to show that we are now in the FNAF 2 building. This was insane. Like when I realized that they were pulling this off and I saw Bonnie's eye glow, I was fully just ecstatic because I knew at that exact moment we would be sent to the FNAF 2 pizzeria. And this basically acts like normal FNAF 2. You have the music box which needs to be wound, and you have all the animatronics, just not including the toy ones. The building itself looks run down, and instead of having a Freddy mask, this time you have a Bonnie mask, so that was pretty cool. The animatronics would also look more withered in this version, kind of looking like their FNAF 2 counterparts, so that was also another cool detail. I would eventually get to 2 AM, and this would introduce the Mangle, who is the final animatronic in this game. The music begins to get louder, and the reveal of the Mangle was very sick, and to have Mangle as the final animatronic was just so awesome to see. We would now have to face off against the spirit and Mangle herself, and this would make a very tenseful final act of the night. How Mangle works is she will spawn in a bunch of owls randomly. If an owl does spawn in, you have to use the mask, and this will get rid of any owls in your office. Mangle is pretty simple. She will spawn in the hallway in front of you, and if she does this, she will do a massive roar, and you have to use the flashlight to basically scare her off. And lastly, the spirit, how she works is you have to go on the camera, and if you see her, you have to simply use the flashlight, and this will make her go away. This night was super tenseful, but eventually I would beat the night, and this will conclude this game. You get this very horrifying cutscene of the spirit herself, and she tells you to let her in, but we refuse to let this happen, and we wake up in the void where the spirit is now in the area that we reside in, and she immediately attacks Fredbear. Us being the absolute legends that we are, we get rid of the spirit, and now we would conclude the main events of the game. To end off, we see a little text saying that the place would open up 5 years later, and this will kind of hint at FNAF 2, so this was actually a prequel to that game, which I found really awesome. And then we would get this super chill ending of us and Fredbear chilling in the void. That about wraps up Juniors, and we get to see the cut content in the extras menu. We get to see all the characters behind the scenes, stuff like that. The game itself was originally gonna be a lot different. The game we got was kind of just a second interpretation of what was originally planned. We also get this super funny picture of the scrapped BB mask, which I find absolutely hilarious. So yeah, and that concludes Juniors, and I will give Juniors a solid scare rating of 4 out of 5. This game is one of the most polished FNAF fan games I've ever played, so for that I am super impressed. So with that, let's get into the big boys. Let's go. This game is called Those Nights at Fredbear's New Destiny. Before starting this game, we get a really prominent warning that there's jump scares, flashing lights, loud noises, and you can already tell this game is going to be the scariest one just by the warning itself. So the first thing we see is a cutscene, and the camera zooms into the Fredbear's diner, and we get some dialogue on what's happening in the pizzeria. Essentially, some guy is, doing some stuff, and basically we need to investigate what's happening inside the animatronic. So we get into the establishment, we grab our flashlight, and our job now is to find the office. This place is massive. I remember first spawning in and being absolutely just stunned on how big the building is. Like, scale wise, this game is just huge. So yeah, we get to the office and we find a nice camera feed which gives us all the cameras around the building. This building has a whopping 23 cameras. Like, looking at the map, this building is humongous. Like, why do you need 23 different rooms in a Fredbear pizzeria? It makes no sense. But nonetheless, to conclude the shift, I would get familiar with the layout of the building, and by this point it was time to leave and begin our night 1 shift. So we enter our first night, and Phone Guy gives us a little quick demo on what we need to look out for. He's not really too helpful. In fact, he's the complete opposite. He pretty much just tells us good luck, and that's about it. I found some sticky notes around the office, and these sticky notes pretty much outlined what I was doing, kind of what to look out for, you know, glowing eyes, not good, stuff like that. Everything was all nice until around 3 AM hit, and I noticed that my generator usage was becoming a lot higher as I was closing doors because I was panicking, and this led to my actual power running low. So I had to make a very quick dart toward the generator room. I got to the room and my power had already drained. I was being very cautious, and this actually led to my downfall because now I had to face whatever happened at the power outage sequence. So I ran frantically to a corner, and yeah, I screamed a bit. So I reattempt night 1, and this time I actually went to the generator a lot earlier to refill it, and this worked. So I went back to my office, and as I was going back, someone was actually already in the office, and this was Spring Bonnie. So I started screaming and running the other way, and I was just hoping that this would be not the end of my night. So I looped Bonnie around the building and went back to my office and shut both doors, and this got rid of the animatronic threat. I then remained in the office for the rest of the night, checking both hallways ever so often, and this would get me the night completion. The next night, we are basically told that we have no jurisdiction and that us seeing the animatronics means nothing, and that's great because we pretty much have to continue our shift like nothing happened. So as I said before, Phone Guy, pretty useless, but nonetheless, new night, and now we have to say hello to Spring Freddy. This animatronic is essentially the same as Spring Bonnie, but now we have 2 animatronics to take care of, so it's a little bit harder. So for this night, what I actually did is I went to the generator room, I just refilled the generator, and I noticed that with these 2 animatronics, they only go toward the office. So me using my massive brain, I stayed in the generator room and camped there because I literally had nothing to worry about. So this worked, and I got the night completion pretty easily, and you can say this is cheating, but as the nights continue, knew this won't be usable, trust me. I would make my way toward the generator room as my power was getting pretty low. As I was making my way toward the room, Spring Bonnie saw me, and this initiated a chase where I was running around the pizzeria just headlessly, and this eventually led me to Spring Freddy, and I got pretty much crushed by the two animatronics, so good start to night 3. I also forgot to mention that there's a new animatronic in this night, which is Plushtrap. The way Plushtrap works is he will go from shelf to shelf until he reaches the generator room. By this point, he will completely deactivate the generator, and if you haven't already gotten rid of Plushtrap, he will essentially give you a game over, so don't do that. The way I dealt with Plushtrap is I literally grabbed him and I chucked him to a shelf across the pizzeria, so that was pretty nice. And each time Plushtrap did end up going back to the generator, I kept just going back and forth, putting him down on the shelf, and this ended up getting me the night completion, and we would get to night 4, where we now had to say hello to the man himself, Fredbear. How Fredbear works is he will eventually go off his stage, and by this point he will track you down. Like, he will literally go from one side of the pizzeria to your exact location, and you either have to hide or run. But running is not that wise because he's literally faster than you. So yeah, you're screwed. So how I went through this night is I would have a strategy where I would go to the generator room. I would then wait for Plushtrap inside the room. And at this point, I would refill the generator, take Plushtrap back toward the shelf, and do this to around 4 AM. Then I would go back toward my office and stay here. And this was probably the worst part of the night because going to the office meant either Spring Bonnie or Spring Freddy would see me, and it would instantly initiate a chase. So that was terrifying. I would then close both doors, and by this point it was time to check for Fredbear. And now it was time to make a last ditch run to the exit door, because in this game, if you get to 6 AM, you don't actually win. You have to exit the building, and the exit door is located on the other side of the building. So this means I have to run away from all the animatronics at the end of the night. So here are some compilations of me running from the animatronics at the last hour of the night. Enjoy. Oh no. It was time for night 5, and this is where things got extremely hard. All the animatronics were extremely aggressive, and I had to adapt to this new level of aggression. So what I found out is that by having Plushtrap in the generator room, I could actually stall him. With Plushtrap, if you pick him up and take him to a shelf, every 3 times you do this, there's a chance that he will bite you. So by letting Plushtrap go from shelf to shelf in the generator room, I could prevent him from going into the generator and at the same time keep him at bay. And by doing this, all the other animatronics will pretty much not even be in the night. The only animatronic being Fredbear, but when Fredbear enters the room and checks for me, I hide in the generator until he leaves, and then I continue the method. This at first was a little bit hard, and I kind of had to change my whole playstyle, but eventually I would get later and later into the night. And I beat night 5, but I actually didn't record it. I somehow forgot to record night 5 being completed. So because of that, I will complete the 2020 mode for you guys, which is the hardest mode in this game and actually hasn't been tested to be completed. So I hope that kind of makes things a lot less, bad. So it was clear this mode from the get-go was gonna be brutally tough, but I had devised a plan that could potentially see us completing this night and therefore making it somewhat possible. So this is how it would go. Essentially, on the beginning of the night, I would make my way to the generator room. I would ignore every single animatronic except Plushtrap and Fredbear, and that would pretty much eliminate half the animatronics in the game. When I got to the generator room, it was a matter of just keeping Plushtrap at bay. I learned pretty early on that Plushtrap works as so. There's certain areas where Plushtrap is more likely to go back to the old shelf than he is from going to the new shelf. I kept Plushtrap in a certain area where he would always go to his old shelf, which was around this point of the map. The red dots on the map signify his movesets and where he would go from one area to the other. By using my flashlight as Plushtrap gets toward this area, he is always more likely to go back to the old shelf than he is going to the new shelf. And this eliminates the threat of me being bit because I actually don't need to grab Plushtrap, only if he gets too close to the generator room and I feel that it is too unsafe. This strat was just me experimenting with the game because I knew that me running playing around with the animatronics would simply not work. So here we are, and honestly, it works pretty well. If you get really good plushtrap RNG, you can even keep him before the shelf, which is pretty good because as long as he doesn't get toward the generator, you're pretty much good to go. I would attempt this night for multiple hours. The main issue was Fredbear, and when he entered my room, if I was, dealing with plushtrap and this happened, it was essentially a game over. Another issue was when plushtrap bites me. This happens once every 3 times you grab him, and if you're not careful, it can really be dangerous, especially if you're already in the generator room itself. So to be safe, I would often just put plushtrap on the shelf every 2 goes as to not risk going through a power outage. So eventually I would get a really good run. However, at around 5:50 AM, plushtrap would enter my generator, and this would initiate a power outage sequence. With not much time left, I would make my way directly toward the exit. All that remained was Fredbear, and thankfully, he didn't become aggressive until I left the building. If Fredbear had become active, it would have been a very close exit. But that concludes the max difficulty night in Those Nights at Freddy's. To conclude, we get this really cool animation of all the animatronics staring us down with text saying that it's over now. So we also get the extras menu, and here we can see all the animatronics in all their glory. I just found that the size of plushtrap compared to everything else was just absolutely hilarious. Like, look at this little dude. It's kind of insane how he became the most dangerous animatronic in this whole game. We also get some cool behind the scenes of the game's development and just some really awesome pictures of the animatronics. Yeah. And with that, that's about it. That was Those Nights at Freddy's. Overall, a very fun and scary FNAF game. It is a remake of Nixon's original back in 2015, but nonetheless, it is an awesome, just kind of homage to Nixon's game. So very well done. I will give this game an overall scare rating of 5 out of 5. Talking about Nixon, let's go into our final FNAF game, and this one is The Joy of Creation. Let's go. We start this game off and immediately something is not right. It appears that we are being stalked by an unknown entity. We are then met with a blue screen, but don't worry, it's just an in-game cutscene. And the game begins. Our job here is to survive the night, and that's about it. We are given 3 cameras to check on the animatronics. We are also given a pretty bad flashlight that, in all honesty, is pretty bad. You constantly need to be recharging it, so yeah. Around the room we are in, we have a bunch of drawers and a bunch of closets, which can house the fuses which we need to keep the place running. We also have a fuse box, and it is very important that we keep things going and nothing, runs out of battery, because if it does, let's just say it's not going to end well. We need to keep looking for these fuses as our overall power will eventually go down, and if we drain too low, then we will have a power outage sequence. My first time playing, I was crowded in the corner of the fuse box room, and I was absolutely terrified. The sounds mixed with the very eerie Theodore march creates a very intense scene. Thankfully, nothing happened. I was in the dark for a while, but eventually my computer would start to make some noise. So, intrigued, I would go back to my computer and boot it up. Here we see some messages on the computer screen, and it appears to be coming from someone called the Curator. It appears that they have constructed this game that we are currently playing, and it establishes the rules which we must adhere to. To win, we have to find the bear and blind it. We need to do this until the clock completes a full rotation. And if you don't know, that means we have to stay alive for 12 hours, so double the original game's length. And like that, we are sent back to the game. And at this point, I was very confused on what I should be doing. My original thought was just stay alive for as long as I could, and eventually my power would fully cut out. And by this point, I was checking my monitors still for some reason. I don't know why. I mean, there's nothing working, but eventually I would really start hearing these noises, and they would grow in its loudness, and I was starting to freak out. This was truly terrifying. Something would appear out of my front door, and some Freddy thing would jump scare me, and it was so bad. This jump scare was it was awesome. This is a 10 out of 10 on the jump scare scale. I was absolutely shocked at this jump scare and how good it was. So after that terrifying experience, it was back to going on the computer and checking for new hints, and we would get new hints on the bunny or Bonnie, and it is told that we should not look at it directly. So knowing this, I still got jump scared by Bonnie, and I got punched in the head. Again, that was fun. After getting clotheslined by Bonnie, I would again meet the same fate as before, getting jump scared by Freddy, but I was now determined to fully find how to beat this mode. And what I found is that I actually need to flash Freddy with my flashlight. I thought before this is how you die, but in actual reality, you need to do this to progress through the night. And I learned that we need to do this 12 times. So with that, I would begin to kind of find my way into the game, using my flashlight sparingly and making sure Freddy would get the flashlight treatment. As I got later and later into the night, I found that I was being stalked by something. I didn't know what. I thought at first it was Freddy doing this, but eventually I found that it was Chica. And yeah, I haven't mentioned Chica or Foxy yet, but Chica is a bit of a weird one. She kind of stalks you down and will eventually do something that will terrify me, but she was something that I didn't really know what to do. Now Foxy, on the other hand, he is more of a passive animatronic, and in saying that, he still will kill me, but not as quickly. Foxy appears on my camera, and if I see him, I have to stare directly in his eye, and he will go through like 3 phases, and if I do this correctly, he should go away. If I somehow, if I mistake Foxy for Freddy and flash him with my flashlight, then I die. And if I let him stay in the camera for too long, I also die, but a lot more horrifically. I found for this night especially, it's very important to be holding a fuse, at all times, just in case the power does go out, because what I learned is if you don't have a fuse in your hand and that power goes out, you're dead. You're dead. Eventually, I would get pretty far into the night, and in saying that, we were about like 9 AM or PM or whatever, but eventually Chica literally went through my roof. She started dangling in some goo pile, and I know that sounds pretty weird, but she was in my roof and I had to react very fast. Me being the absolute smart genius that I am, I did nothing and was just terrified. I stood there still, and this led to another power out sequence. I just can't win in this game. What I found later on is that Chica, when she spawns in, you have to look for her little cupcakes that spawn around the office, because I was meant to know that, and you're meant to use the flashlight on them, and they're so cute, but they're so annoying at the same time. Like, can you just go away? Please, I am trying to beat this game. But nonetheless, eventually, I would learn how to deal with these little things, and this kind of gave me a little advantage because I knew every single animatronic and their mechanic. Well, I thought I did until I died another 20 times. And like all FNAF games, eventually, instead of being scared, I grew a hatred to some animatronics like I do. Bonnie, for example, I absolutely hate Bonnie in this game. Like, every time he punched the camera, I think I punched my monitor, so that was fun. And I kid you not, after 2 hours of playing the demo, eventually, I would get pretty far into the night, and I felt confident, and I knew that I'm doing well. My fuses are being maintained really well. Everything's got power. Happy days. And I was doing pretty good. There was a bunch of close calls where I literally just barely managed to put the fuse in before the power outage sequence. In fact, I think literally the power went out and I still somehow survived. When I mean close, I mean close, right? Chica spawned in. I checked for her cupcakes. I told him to go away, and that was all going well. Foxy, I took care of him, and a lot of times I was pretty, nervous because I hadn't been this far in hours, so this was going well. And eventually, and for the last time, I would find Freddy and tell him to get out of my house, and at this point, I would complete the night. But that wasn't it. The door in front of me opened up very anonymously, and I walked out of my room, my safe space, and I started walking down the hallway, and as soon as you know it, I was just mesmerized by a cutscene that took me to a new dimension. And as that happened, the game would cut and we would get the to be continued. I hope you all enjoyed that game. Honestly, by far the scariest in the video. It's a 5-star on the scare factor, could be a 6, maybe even a 7 when the full game releases. So this is definitely gonna be one to come back to. Nixon, you absolutely killed it here. Phenomenal. Mwah! Chef's kiss. Ladies and gentlemen, those were the scariest FNAF games I've ever played. I hope you have enjoyed this video. I definitely did not. I enjoyed it. I was just scared. Okay. If you enjoyed this video and if you want to see more videos like this one, subscribe and like the video if you enjoy the concept. On screen here is a video where the games get progressively harder. So if you want to see me get really angry, then you know where to go. But anyways, until next time, take it easy and goodbye.